Video 4 of 4 on comparative advantage. Learning target is I can show and explain the consumption possibilities with specialization in trade for a country when given a term of trade. So we're going to calculate a country's consumption possibilities when they decide to specialize in trade. And we're also going to draw a consumption possibilities frontier. This is similar to a production possibilities frontier, except it involves consumption, not production. So consumption possibilities are the possible combinations of goods and services a nation can consume, and we're going to say that they're going to be able to consume more with specialization in trade than with self-sufficiency. So let's take our previous example, the United States and Malaysia, clothes and software. Malaysia had the comparative advantage in clothes, and the United States in software. And let's first draw the production possibilities frontier for Malaysia. Malaysia can make 60 clothes, or they can make 20 software, or some combination in between. Now, before specialization in trade, if Malaysia was just self-sufficient, then this would also be their consumption possibilities, 60 clothes or 20 software or some combination in between, because they wouldn't be trading any goods. They would just be making clothes and software themselves, isolated from the rest of the world. But let's take a look at what happens when Malaysia decides to specialize in the good that they have the comparative advantage in, clothes, and then potentially trade for software. Let's say that Malaysia and the United States agree to a term of trade of 1 clothes for 1/2 software, which would be mutually beneficial because 1/2 is between 1/3 software, the opportunity cost for Malaysia, and 2/3 software, the opportunity cost of one piece of clothing to the United States. What are Malaysia's consumption possibilities with specialization in trade? Malaysia is just going to stick to making clothes. They're not worried about software at all, so they're going to make 60 clothes no matter what, whether they consume them or trade them. They're making 60 clothes. So once they make those 60 clothes, one possibility for them is to consume all 60 of those clothes. So one consumption possibility for them is 60 clothes and 0 software, because if they consume all 60 of those clothes, they don't have any clothes left to trade to the United States for software. But now let's look at the other extreme possibility. Let's say they make those 60 clothes and then decide to trade all of them to the United States. How much software would Malaysia get back, and thus how much software could Malaysia then consume? Well, if the term of trade is 1 clothes for 1/2 software, if they traded 60 clothes to the United States, then they could get 30 software in return, 60 times 1/2. Taking a look at the graph and drawing Malaysia's consumption possibilities frontier, we're going to have a point on the clothes axis and a point on the software axis. Now, when you're drawing consumption possibilities frontiers with specialization in trade, one point is going to be the same as the PPF. So there's either going to be a point at 60 or a point at 20, and you'll know which one should be the same because it's the one that the country has a comparative advantage in. So Malaysia, because they have the comparative advantage in clothes, they're just going to make clothes, and one possibility for them is to consume all 60 of those clothes, so we have a point at 60 clothes and 0 software. But now we're also going to have a point out at 30 software and 0 clothes. Connect the points, and their consumption possibilities are either 60 clothes and 0 software, or 30 software and 0 clothes, or some combination in between. Now, for example, let's say that Malaysia wanted to make 30 clothes and then, make 60 clothes and then consume 30 of them themselves and then trade the other 30 to the United States. This would still be beneficial to Malaysia versus making 30 clothes, and then if they made 30 clothes, they could make 10 software. That's a possible production possibility for them, 30 clothes and 10 software. Therefore, without specialization in trade, that would have been a consumption possibility, 30 clothes and 10 software. But with specialization in trade, when Malaysia makes 60 clothes, takes 30 of them and consumes them, and then the other 30 of them and trades them to the United States, we have a point at 30 clothes consumed and then 15 software consumed, because the other 30 that they're trading to the United States, they could get 15 software in return. Now you try. China and Japan, a previous example that we've already done. Draw the PPF and the consumption possibilities frontier for Japan, assuming the mutually beneficial term of trade of either 1 car for 1/4 fish or 1 fish for 4 cars. Pause your video now and work out this problem. Okay, Japan's production possibilities frontier has 10 fish and 0 cars, or 50 cars and 0 fish. We said that Japan had the comparative advantage in cars. So now, when we're looking at drawing Japan's consumption possibilities frontier, one possibility for them, they're just going to make cars. So one possibility for them is to make 50 cars and then consume all 50 of those cars. So as far as their CPF goes, we have a point at 50 cars and 0 fish. Now we want to figure out how much fish could they consume with specialization and trade, still making the 50 cars. If they traded all 50 cars to China, how much fish would they receive in return? Well, you want to look at the mutually beneficial terms of trade, and the one that's going to be useful here is going to be the 1 car for 1/4 fish, because Japan has the comparative advantage in cars. So looking at that term of trade, 1 car for 1/4 fish, if Japan made the 50 cars, traded all of them to China, how many fish could they consume? 12.5. 50 times 1/4. Connect the points, and there's Japan's consumption possibilities frontier. Notice it's out farther than their PPF. If you're ever working these out and you find that a CPF is inside the PPF, you did something wrong. Okay. So Japan's consumption possibilities with specialization and trade, 50 cars or 12.5 fish.